Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. It's 9 p.m. in New Delhi, 4:30 in the evening in London, and 11:30 in the morning in New York. And you're watching Newsnight on DD India, your prime time destination for news and bespoke analysis. It's good to see you again. Right. On the show tonight, Indian Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar says a global pandemic requires a global effort. Says he will do everything in his power to help the people of India overcome the COVID crisis, even if it means accepting foreign help. Now, in the last few days, some countries have come forward and shared medical supplies with India, including oxygen, medicine, and equipment. Now, when asked whether it indicated a change in India's policy of not accepting foreign help, Jaishankar told ANI in an interview from London that although the relief material pouring in from overseas is being described as aid, India calls it quote-unquote friendship. More on that later. Also on the show, Indian Central Bank announces $6.7 billion in cheap loans to support the country's healthcare sector, which is reeling from a deadly second wave of coronavirus. Now, new measures make it easier for banks to give up cheap loans to those in need. All that and much, much more coming up over the next 1 hour. But first, as always, the headlines. A drop in COVID cases in Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi and Gujarat as India continues its fight against the pandemic. 24 states report a positivity rate of more than 15%. States told to take stringent measures such as containment zone as government warns of a third wave of the coronavirus. Indian Railways, Indian Air Force and Indian Navy ferry more oxygen. Railways transport 137 tankers containing 2,067 metric tons of oxygen. INS Talwar, INS Airavat and INS Kolkata bringing oxygen and other supplies. Air Force flies sorties too. External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar says a global challenge such as COVID-19 requires global partnership. Lord's international support for India also says accepting foreign aid not a shift in India's policy. Uttar Pradesh extends lockdown by 4 days. Lucknow gets the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Hospital built by the DRDO. A partial lockdown in West Bengal, but Bihar opts for a complete lockdown, and Sikkim introduces night curfew as states continue vaccinations. Indian government extends dispersal of food grains to people under the Prime Minister's Food Security Welfare Program for another 2 months to overcome the economic hardship caused by the COVID-19 disruption. 800 million people to get 5 kg food grains free. India's central bank announces a slew of measures, including a $6.7 billion stimulus to boost COVID-19 related healthcare infrastructure, new COVID loan books for banks, and a special long-term repo operation for small banks. Mamata Banerjee takes the oath as West Bengal Chief Minister for the third consecutive term. Prime Minister Modi congratulates her. BJP National President JP Nadda administers a pledge to party legislators in the state to stand against political violence. Governor reiterates his concern over post-poll violence. And Supreme Court quashes the Maharashtra law granting reservation to the Maratha community in admissions and government jobs in the state. Says exceeding the 50% ceiling without any exceptional circumstances to justify it violates Article 14. All right, let me dive straight into our cover story. Now, there is a sliver of good news coming out of some states in India as the country struggles to break the transmission of the coronavirus. Some districts of Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh and Chhattisgarh are reporting a drop in new COVID cases. This even as government warns that new variants of the virus are very infectious. But that's not all. A third wave of the pandemic is quote-unquote inevitable, says a top scientific advisor to the government. That and more in the next report. Take a look.
India's battle against COVID-19 is underway. In the past 24 hours, over 3,82,000 new corona cases have been reported and 3,38,439 patients have recovered after treatment, and the recovery rate has touched 81.91%. The total number of active cases in the country is 34,87,229. At the Union Health Ministry media briefing, the government said that more than 1 lakh active cases have been reported from 12 states. 24 states and union territories show more than 15% COVID positivity rate. The Union Health Ministry says that there has been an indication of some drop in new cases in states like Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi and Gujarat, while new cases are on the rise in states like Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan and West Bengal.
महाराष्ट्र में केसेस में रिडक्शन नोट किया गया है। इसी तरह उत्तर प्रदेश में भी, दिल्ली में भी कुछ केसेस में रिडक्शन नोट किया जा रहा है। छत्तीसगढ़ में भी इसी तरह केसेस में रिडक्शन दिखता है। गुजरात, मध्य प्रदेश, तेलंगाना, झारखंड, दमन एंड दीव, लद्दाख, लक्षद्वीप और अंडमान निकोबार, इन स्टेट और केंद्र शासित प्रदेशों में हम देखते हैं कि एक अर्ली साइंस ऑफ रिडक्शन नोट होता है। हालांकि यह बहुत ज़रूरी है समझना कि एक इन्फेक्शियस डिजीज से जब हम डील करते हैं तो एक दिन की ढिलाई हमें पुरानी परिस्थिति पर या अर्ली फर्दर स्प्रेड ऑफ इन्फेक्शन की दृष्टि में ले जा सकती है।
The Health Ministry says that some districts in several states like Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Chhattisgarh are seeing a drop in new cases. The positivity rate in Bengaluru and Chennai is a matter of concern. Work is going on with the states on containing and reducing the number of cases. The Health Ministry has advised the states to take tough steps like containment zones for breaking the chain of transmission.
वो एरिया है जहां पर कि या तो हायर सर्ज नोट किया जा रहा है, ज़्यादा केसेस नोट किए जा रहे हैं या हाई केस पॉजिटिविटी नोट की जा रही है, वहां पर जरूरी है कि हम इंटेंसिव एक्शन और लोकल कंटेनमेंट पर उसी मोमेंटम से काम करें ताकि हम इन्फेक्शन का फैलाव रोक सकें।
The Union Health Ministry has said that this coronavirus is very infectious. There are total 4 variants which are being studied by scientists. The government has said that the third wave of COVID-19 is inevitable and the people of the country have to be prepared for the new wave.
Phase 3 is inevitable, given the high levels of circulating virus. But it's not clear on what time scale this phase 3 will occur. Hopefully, incrementally, but we should prepare for new waves. Previous infections and vaccines will cause adaptive pressure on the virus for new kinds of changes which try to escape it. And therefore, we should be prepared by scientifically to take care of that.
In a significant development, 2 medical oxygen plants funded by PM CARES is being installed at AIIMS New Delhi and RML Hospital. Carried out on a war footing, the 2 plants were swiftly airlifted from Coimbatore. In order to effectively address the high surge of COVID-19 cases in the country, PM CARES has allocated funds for the installation of 500 medical oxygen plants across the country. These plants are planned to be set up within 3 months.
We have developed one onboard oxygen generation technology for our indigenous aircraft, that is fighter aircraft, LCA Tejas. Based upon the same technology, we have developed this medical oxygen plant. This oxygen plant is already functional in some of the military hospitals in Northeast and in Jammu Kashmir, Ladakh area. So we have been given a target to set up 500 such plants all over India in different states, and the funding for this has been done through the PM CARE Fund. On the direction of the Prime Minister, we are setting, this is the first plant which has been set up in Delhi at the AIIMS Trauma Center. A similar plant is been set up in RML today itself, and we expect that both will get started from tomorrow onward. Another 3 more plant which we are expecting next 2-3 days is in Safdarjung Hospital, Lady Hardinge Hospital, and AIIMS Jajjar.
Overcoming all hurdles and finding new solutions, Indian Railways is continuing its journey of bringing relief by delivering liquid medical oxygen to various states across the country. So far, Indian Railways has delivered nearly 2,067 metric tons of liquid medical oxygen in 137 tankers to various states across the country. 34 oxygen expresses have already completed their journey so far. It is Indian Railways' endeavour to deliver as much LMO as possible in the shortest possible time to the requesting states. So far, Indian Railways has delivered more than 2,067 metric tons liquid medical oxygen to various states. 174 metric tons has been delivered to Maharashtra, 641 metric tons to UP, 190 metric tons to Madhya Pradesh, 229 metric tons to Haryana and 123 metric tons to Telangana. Delhi has got 707 metric tons of oxygen.
हम लोगों ने राज्य सरकारों के साथ भी सक्रिय तौर पे समन्वय स्थापित किया था और उत्तर प्रदेश में लखनऊ से हमारी जो ट्रेन चली थी वो भारत की दूसरी ऑक्सीजन स्पेशल ट्रेन थी और उसके बाद से हम लोग लखनऊ में अब तक 17 ट्रेन टर्मिनेट कर चुके हैं और जिसके जरिए हम लोग 602 टन ऑक्सीजन अभी तक विभिन्न स्थानों से उत्तर प्रदेश के विभिन्न स्थानों पर ला चुके हैं.
As part of the national effort to battle the COVID-19 pandemic, the Indian Navy is ferrying oxygen and other materials from abroad. As part of Operation Samudra Setu 2, INS Talwar arrived in New Mangalore port from Manama in Bahrain, carrying the first consignment of liquid oxygen-filled cryogenic tankers. Naval vessel INS Talwar arrived in Mangalore, Karnataka with 40 metric tons of oxygen. From here, these oxygen-filled cryogenic tankers are soon being transported to places where oxygen is needed. The 7 ships of the Indian Navy comprising INS Kolkata, INS Kochi, INS Talwar, Tabar, Trikand, Jalashwa and INS Airavat were deployed to bring cryogenic containers filled with liquid medical oxygen and related medical equipment from various Gulf countries. Indian Navy ship INS Airavat has left Singapore. It has also brought with it 3,600 oxygen cylinders and 8 oxygen tanks of 27 tons and is bringing oxygen from there. Meanwhile, INS Kolkata has left Kuwait. It is carrying 2 27-ton oxygen tanks and concentrator. The Indian Air Force remains the lifeline of the country in the corona crisis. Air Force aircraft are circling to bring oxygen, medicines and other necessary equipment from abroad. In the same sequence, a C-17 aircraft of the Indian Air Force flew from Hindon Air Base on Tuesday evening and reached Perth in Australia in the early hours of Wednesday. With 4 empty cryogenic oxygen containers, the aircraft is now returning to Chennai. After refueling in Chennai, the aircraft is expected to reach Panagar by late night. Another Indian Air Force aircraft, IL-76, reached Singapore on Wednesday afternoon. After loading 352 empty oxygen cylinders from Singapore, the aircraft is expected to reach Hindon. Meanwhile, the government has requested all the doctors of the country to help people in telemedicine.
We need physicians fraternity to come forward to provide teleconsultations to people, to families at home. Those who have acquired infection, जो इन्फेक्शन हो गया उनको सस्पेक्ट है, खांसी है, बुखार है और लगता है कि ये कोरोना ही हो सकता है, उनको विनती है कि डॉक्टर्स अपनी तरीके से टेलीमेडिसिन के द्वारा उन तक पहुँचें और जो डॉक्टर्स के एसोसिएशंस हैं वो मिलके ऐसे कॉल सेंटर या टेलीमेडिसिन सपोर्ट सिस्टम बनाएं.
Union Chemicals and Fertilizers Minister Sadanand Gowda presided over a meeting regarding the availability of medicines and other essential medicines for the treatment of COVID disease. At the meeting, all the 7 manufacturers of Remdesivir appreciated their efforts to increase the production of 38 lakh vials from a month ago to 1.03 crore vials per month. Between 3rd May and 9th May, 16.5 lakh vials of Remdesivir have been allocated to all the states. The availability of essential medicines and the need to continuously monitor black marketing and hoarding was emphasized. Overall, all-round efforts are underway and the only mantra now is to have a COVID-appropriate behavior and get vaccinated. With Nitendra Singh, Nandita Dagar and Rajesh Raj, Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, India's central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, on Wednesday allowed certain individual and small borrowers more time to repay their debt. It provided a 50,000 crore rupee or $6.7 billion special window to banks to lend to vaccine makers, hospitals and COVID-related health infrastructure as it looked to cushion the pandemic's blow to the economy.
The Reserve Bank of India, RBI, on Wednesday announced a slew of measures to help the services industry tide over the second coronavirus wave in the country. RBI Governor Shaktikant Das announced an on-tap liquidity window of 50,000 crore rupees, which will be open till 31st of March 2022. Under this, banks can provide fresh loans to a wide range of entities, including hospitals, oxygen suppliers, manufacturers of ventilators and vaccine manufacturers.
To boost provision of immediate liquidity for ramping up COVID-related healthcare infrastructure and services in the country, an on-tap liquidity window of rupees 50,000 crores, rupees 50,000 crore with tenor of up to 3 years at the repo rate is being opened till March 31st, 2022. That is March 31st of next year. Under the scheme, banks can provide fresh lending support to a wide ranging of entities including vaccine manufacturers, importers and suppliers of vaccine and priority medical devices, hospitals and dispensaries, pathology labs, manufacturers and suppliers of oxygen and ventilators, importers of vaccine and COVID-related drugs, logistics firms and also patients for treatment.
The priority sector lending announced by the RBI Governor will include 3-year targeted long-term repo operations for small finance banks, another installment of GSAP of 35,000 crore rupees, lending by small finance banks to micro, small and medium enterprises. The measure relating to special long-term repo operations for small finance banks will primarily lend to micro, unorganized and small industries. The RBI Governor said this facility will help them with fresh lending of up to 10 lakh rupees per borrower and it will be available till October 31st, 2021.
To provide further support to small business units, micro and small industries and other unorganized sector entities who are adversely affected during the current wave of the pandemic, it has been decided to conduct special 3-year long-term repo operations, that is 3-year SLTRO of rupees 10,000 crore at repo rate for the small finance banks to be deployed for fresh lending of up to rupees 10 lakh per borrower. This facility will be available till 31st October 21.
The RBI Governor said that individuals and micro and small and medium enterprises MSME having an aggregate exposure of up to 25 crore rupees who have not availed restructuring earlier shall be eligible for having their loans restructured. Such restructuring may be invoked up to 30th of September 2021.
Borrowers, that is individuals and small businesses and MSMEs having aggregate exposure of up to rupees 25 crore and who have not availed restructuring under any of the earlier restructuring frameworks, including the Resolution Framework 1.0 of RBI dated 6th August 2020, and who were classified as standard as on 31st March 2021, shall be eligible to be considered under the Resolution Framework 2.0. Restructuring under the proposed framework may be invoked up to 30th September and shall have to be implemented within 90 days after invocation.
All these measures announced by the RBI are set to ease access to emergency health services, special long-term repo operations for small finance banks, credit to MSME entrepreneurs and Resolution Framework 2.0 for COVID-related stressed assets of individuals, small businesses and MSMEs. Industry experts feel that the proactive steps announced by the RBI on Wednesday to boost business and economy are the right decisions taken at the right time to deal with the COVID's second wave in the country and provide liquidity support for economic recovery. Meanwhile, responding positively to the relief measures announced by the RBI, Key domestic stock indices ended around 1% higher on Wednesday, with banks and pharma stocks gaining the most. So the Sensex at the BSE ended 424 points higher at 48,678. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange added 121 points to settle at 14,618 on Wednesday. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, the Union Cabinet has approved allocation of additional food grain to NFSA beneficiaries under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana Phase 3 for another 2 months, for the months of May and June this year. The Cabinet gave its ex post facto approval to allocation of additional food grain at 5 kg per person per month free of cost. Additional food grain for about 79.88 crore beneficiaries. Beneficiaries covered under National Food Security Act, including those covered under DBT. State or UT-wise allocation in terms of wheat or rice shall be decided by Department of Food and Public Distribution. The DFPD may decide on the extension of the lifting or distribution period as per operational requirements. Total outgo in terms of food grains approximately 80 LMT. Additional food grain would entail an estimated food subsidy of nearly 25,333 crore rupees. Estimated economic cost rupees 36,789 per MT for rice and rupees 25,731 per MT for wheat. The battle against COVID-19 pandemic is being waged by the states as well. More in the next report.
The battle against the COVID-19 pandemic is being waged in the states as well. If we first talk about Uttar Pradesh, then in view of the grim conditions posed by the pandemic, the Yogi government has extended the lockdown till Monday. Till now, the lockdown was till Thursday 7 a.m. morning. But in view of the evolving situation, lockdown has been extended. Also, the state government is putting all its might to punish those not wearing masks.
testing. हमारा कोरोना आंशिक कर्फ्यू है, उसको भी सोमवार प्रातःकाल 7 बजे तक किया गया है। इस दौरान 5,515 टीमों द्वारा पूरे प्रदेश के जो हमारे 12,000 वार्ड हैं उनमें सब में ये सफाई का काम इन दिनों लगातार जो कोरोना आंशिक कर्फ्यू है इन दौरान किया जा रहा है।
The Atal Bihari Vajpayee COVID-19 hospital for COVID patients, set up by the DRDO in record time, has been dedicated to the nation in Lucknow. State Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath reached the hospital. The 500-bedded COVID-19 hospital of the DRDO will be run by the medical officers and paramedical staff of the Armed Forces Health Services. With help from the state government, DRDO has requisitioned oxygen and medical supplies, which will be given free of cost. While West Bengal has announced partial lockdown, in view of surge in corona cases, wearing mask has been made mandatory. 50% attendance in government offices permitted, and cinema halls, beauty parlours and shopping complexes will remain closed. State transport and metro will run with 50% occupancy.
এবারে স্ট্রিংটা একটু ইনফেকশন বেশি করছে, সেই জন্য আমাদের ইমিডিয়েট কতগুলো এফেক্টিভ মানে অ্যাকশন নিতে হচ্ছে। স্টেট গভর্নমেন্ট অফিসে 50% অ্যাটেন্ডেন্স করছে। মুভমেন্ট অফ অল লোকাল ট্রেনস টু বি সাসপেন্ডেড ফ্রম টুমরো। নো ফ্লাইট উইল বি অ্যালাউড টু এন্টার বেঙ্গল, কলকাতা, বাগডোগরা, অন্ডাল from 7 May midnight from anywhere outside the state without RT-PCR negative test report of last 72 hours.
In Bihar, complete lockdown has come into place and will continue till 15th May. During the lockdown, shops selling ration, dairy and essential commodities will be open for 4 hours from 7 a.m. in the morning till 11 a.m. Lockdown is being enforced strictly on roads in Patna.
इसका मुख्य उद्देश्य कोरोना के बढ़ते हुए मामले हैं और अप्रत्याशित वृद्धि जो हुई है विशेषकर हम लोगों के पटना जिले में, उसको नियंत्रित करना, जो चेन एक है उसको ब्रेक करना इसका उद्देश्य है।
In Himachal Pradesh, corona curfew will be in place from 6th May midnight. Section 144 has been imposed. All government offices will be closed in Himachal Pradesh till 16th May. Employees will do work from home, shops will be closed, only essential supply shops will remain open. In Sikkim, night curfew has been imposed from 5 p.m. evening till 9 a.m. morning till further orders. Meghalaya Chief Minister, in view of the COVID-19 present situation, has decided to impose a complete lockdown in East Khasi Hills district in Meghalaya, which will be in place from 5th May 8 p.m. to 10th May morning. Weekend lockdown has been imposed in all districts of the state. In Delhi, 20,960 new corona cases have been reported in the past 24 hours and 311 patients have succumbed to the pandemic. Delhi Health Minister Satyendra Jain reviewed the preparations at the COVID Care Centre in Gurudwara Rakabganj. Haryana government is also making efforts to provide more and more health facilities to people.
सभी मेडिकल कॉलेजेस का अगर मिला लें तो 1000 बेड्स नए ये बनने की हमारी स्थिति में है। साथ ही DRDO जो आर्मी की सहायता से हम 500 बेड का एक हॉस्पिटल पानीपत में रिफाइनरी में और 500 बेड का हिसार में जहां ऑक्सीजन को गैस रूप में उपलब्ध है, ये 2 मेडिकल कॉलेज भी बनाए जा रहे हैं। गुरुग्राम में CSR के तहत वेदांता ग्रुप भी एक 100 बेड का नया अस्पताल ये बना रहा है। मैनकाइंड फार्मा के 70 बेड का एक अस्पताल भी तैयार किया गया है, उसका भी आज या कल में उसका उद्घाटन कर दिया जाएगा। तो ऐसे इन सब बेड्स की व्यवस्था करने के लिए हमने एक अधिकारी भी जिम्मे लगा दिए ताकि डेली उसकी मॉनिटरिंग वो कर सकें।
Meanwhile, vaccination is going across the country. In several states, vaccination of 18 to 44-year-old has started. Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan talked to the youth who took the jab via video conferencing.
मैं अपने बच्चों से ये भी कहना चाहता हूं कि आप निर्भय होकर बताइए, हमने वैक्सीन लगाई है, वैक्सीन का फायदा है, आप भी जब नंबर आए तो वैक्सीन जरूर लगाइए, क्योंकि वैक्सीन का सुरक्षा चक्र अगर हमने बच्चों को उपलब्ध करा दिया, अपने बहन और भाइयों को उपलब्ध करा दिया, तो बड़ी सुरक्षा कोरोना से बचने के लिए हमको मिल जाएगी।
As part of the world's largest vaccination program underway in the country, till now over 16 crore 4 lakh doses of the corona vaccine have been given. The union government has so far provided more than 17.02 crore vaccine doses to states and union territories free of cost. More than 94.47 lakh doses are still available with the states, union territories to be administered. Over 36 lakh doses in addition will be received by the states UTs in the next 3 days.
गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के द्वारा करीब 16 करोड़ डोजेज पूरे देश में फ्री अब तक वितरित की जा चुकी हैं, जिसमें कि पीपल अबव 45 ईयर्स को 12.31 करोड़ डोजेज, हेल्थ केयर वर्कर्स को 1.58 करोड़ डोजेज, फ्रंटलाइन वर्कर्स को 2.09 करोड़ डोजेज दी जा चुकी हैं। इन डोजेज को देते हुए जैसे कि हमने लिबरलाइज पॉलिसी 1 मई से शुरू की थी, उसके तहत अब कई स्टेट्स में, करीब 9 स्टेट्स में ये कार्य और सुचारू रूप से चलने लगा है और 6.71 लाख लोगों को 18 से 44 एज ग्रुप में भी वहां पर वैक्सीनेशन दिया जा चुका है।
Meanwhile, Union Home Ministry has drawn the attention of states and union territories on the need to have a plan of action to ensure fire incidents do not occur in health facilities, particularly COVID-19 facilities. It is pertinent to note that in the battle against the COVID-19 pandemic, public participation along with cooperation of the centre and the states is the key. Bureau Report, DD India.
Right, moving on, Union Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan along with Member Health of Niti Aayog, Dr. Vinod K. Paul, chaired a high-level meeting on Wednesday with the eastern states of Assam, West Bengal, Odisha, Bihar and Jharkhand. The review meeting assessed the arrangements put in place by these eastern states for containment and management of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the evidence suggests that the pandemic is moving eastward and a rise has been observed in the number of daily cases in these states along with rising mortality. 5 critical areas of action were discussed for addressing the needs and challenges of recent phase of the COVID-19 pandemic in these states, which has led to an unprecedented surge in number of daily cases and increased mortality as well. And starting Wednesday, the list of districts across the country where the positivity rate is above 20% has been displayed on the website of the Health Ministry. Now, this list is dynamic and will be updated on a regular basis. Now, yes, we have a plan. That was Indian Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar's response to a pointed question about India's fight against the second wave of the coronavirus. He told an audience comprising the Indian diaspora in London that India has a vaccination plan and an economic plan to overcome the crisis. More in the next report.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar virtually spoke at a diaspora-focused event as part of the Global Dialogue series hosted by the Indian High Commissioner to the UK, Gayatri Isar Kumar, on Wednesday. The theme of the event was, "Does India have a plan from survival to revival?" Dr. Jaishankar said that the current COVID-19 crisis is very serious and all efforts are being made to address the concerns. On the central theme of the discussion, Dr. Jaishankar stressed that India has not one but many plans to move the country towards the revival mode.
Yes, we have a plan in the sense that we are responding to the immediacy of the second wave, but we have a plan beyond that, which is the immediacy is centered around oxygen, medicines, healthcare support system. But the plan is really to expand vaccination, because vaccinations is the way out of COVID. It's not a silver bullet, but it's as close as anybody can come to it. Do we have an economic plan? Absolutely. The production-linked incentive is a great example of that. Do we have a foreign policy plan? You can see that in operation today. You can see all our relationship, the enormous goodwill that we have accumulated, both historically, but especially in the last 7 years. I think that goodwill today is in full display. That goodwill today is really helping the people of India.
The vaccination drive in India is in full swing. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also explained the difference between India's vaccine production situation from that of the US and said Covishield is being made in India due to its efficient production venue. Answering a question on India's COVID-19 vaccine export, the minister said that the approval to make the vaccine in India came with an obligation as it was an international collaboration. Jaishankar also informed that there was an obligation to support the COVAX initiative to give vaccines at a low cost to a number of nations.
Along with that ability to make in India, the approvals to make in India, came an obligation to supply it to a large part of the world. Okay, so so the first thing people have to understand, it was not that the vaccine production started in India. It was invented by an Indian, owned by an Indian, produced by an Indian. It was a truly international collaboration. And when there is an international collaboration, if somebody gave you a vaccine to make in India, then obviously you have to do your part, otherwise it doesn't work.
Moving ahead, Jaishankar thanked the Indian community across the world for all that they are doing at this time of crisis. He said the Indian community outside of India has been very supportive. He further urged the international Indian community to be in touch with the embassy to find out what needs to be done. He also thanked all the nations who are coming to India's help, making references to the US, the UK, Gulf countries and others stepping in to support India with the much needed medical supplies.
We feel in India at a moment of great travail, a sense that the world is with us. So they feel a sense of solidarity. And that sense of solidarity here in London, I feel very much from the G7, because almost all the G7 countries have been through exactly what we have been through. So they feel for you. They feel for you. I think, look, this pandemic is a truly not just a game changer. It's a thought changer.
On the management of the COVID-19 pandemic internally, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said that the new variant of COVID-19 hits the respiratory system sooner. There is a 7 times increase in the demand for oxygen in the country. He pressed upon how oxygen-carrying trains are being run across the country to reach the population in need. He also added that cryogenic tanks for generators and oxygen concentrators are being arranged for smoothly tackling the second wave of this infection. Dr. Jaishankar also mentioned how the Indian Air Force is actively engaged in controlling the crisis. He expressed that the government is giving its all and more to fight this mighty battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. Ending the session, Dr. S. Jaishankar exuded confidence in the policies of the government in lieu of tackling the pandemic. He also said that the focus is mainly on oxygen, medicines, and the expansion of the vaccination drive and minimize the risk factor. He assured that India definitely knows the strategy of survival to revival. Bureau Report, DD India.
All right, time now for our In Focus segment in which we are discussing about global pandemic needs global effort. Joining me are two very special guests, Professor K. Vijay Raghavan, Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India, and Dr. Rana A.K. Singh, Director and Medical Superintendent, Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of Medical Sciences, and Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital in New Delhi. Gentlemen, welcome to News Night. Professor Raghavan, if I can start with you now, could you, for the benefit of our viewers, expand on what you said this afternoon? You said a third wave of the pandemic is quote unquote inevitable. Why do we say that, and how prepared do you think, how sanguine are you that India is prepared to face any such eventuality whenever that might happen?
Thank you. We must go beyond that headline and look at what that means.
Right.
First wave had a virus which had open season and could go into a naive population. That virus didn't change much, and people took precautions. They were infected, and that quelled the first wave. The second wave and this enormous surge started because there were many people who were not immunized or infected in the previous wave, and that was available for the virus now because of change in behavior. New variants only speed up the process, but they don't effectively change what we should do, which is adopt COVID-appropriate behavior. Now, going forward, there is a danger as vaccinations get completed, as significant number of people otherwise have been infected, that the virus is now getting into a corner. It cannot propagate anymore.
Right.
The only way it can do that is if it changes to evade the immune system. If it manages to do that, then we will have some time down the line, we don't know how long later, another wave coming. But the good news is that we are prepared for such an eventuality because we know from experiments in laboratories even now the nature of the vaccine evasive or the immune evasive mechanisms. So we will have new kinds of vaccines ready to hit the virus should it change in a manner where it can be vaccine evasive. So a third wave will likely happen only if these steps are not mixed with us being very careful. And so we must take every care. But right now the stress is on the science end, whereas in the second wave right now, it's on building up our ability to deal with this current situation where all of us need to come together and changing our behavior so that we can crunch the second wave.
Indeed. Dr. Singh, coming to you now, we are nowhere near the so-called peak of the second wave. I'm told, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the cases are only beginning to plateau, but the peak is still some time away. But we are facing or going through a severe shortage of oxygen supplies in most hospitals across the country. But I'm told that the RML is one of two hospitals in the country, in the city in fact, which will get very soon an oxygen plant. Now, could you walk our viewers through how equipped you think RML Hospital is to begin with to cope with this challenge and what that means for other hospitals across the length and breadth of the country?
You see, when we look at this on a national scenario, India is a very vast, very big country. We have got, 130 crore people. Delhi is a very vast city. Roughly 2 to 2.5%, population of the country lives in this city. So, and the way the second wave has surged and surged suddenly, and the number of cases they've started coming up and soaring rapidly in quick succession, this can challenge, like any infrastructure. I'm telling you, even the mightiest and the richest country, the infrastructure and everything can fall short of the true requirement. And for us also, this is no exception.
Right.
We are getting number of cases which is like very high. Having said that, we are trying to cope with this situation. We are trying to live up to the expectations of the people, and we are succeeding. Let me confess you at this stage that in a couple of days, I have increased the capacity of COVID beds of my hospital by just double. We had roughly 215 COVID beds, and from tomorrow, I am going to start, another 200 COVID beds. So the capacity will be doubled. And as you were saying, the DRDO has given us that oxygen generation plant. It has already been installed. It has already been, like just leaving the hospital at around 8:30 or so. The machine had started, and now the only the final leg of connection between the, the gas pipeline was to be done. I think a couple of hours from now, that equipment will become functional. No doubt that oxygen production, as I said, like if this type of cases or if this type of pandemic, takes the kind of proportion it is taking, so it is out to exhaust, even the maximum reserve.
Right.
So on top of what we have already, the oxygen supply, we have got this equipment. As I said, couple of hours from now, that machine will start pumping oxygen into my system. So we are doing every possible thing as a hospital, as a head of the hospital, to live up to the expectation, to live up to the mandate, or to try to cope with the challenge which we are facing in the face of, like sudden surge of corona cases. And I'm sure we are doing our best. And before I close, here on this topic, I'll say that the numbers are increasing, but the most important thing is to contain this number, to bring it back to the nadir which we had, like 2-3 months back. For that, every one of us, each our countrymen will have to do their bit.
Absolutely.
That is, we have to rigidly follow corona appropriate behavior.
That's very important.
Wear masks. We'll have to maintain social distancing.
Absolutely.
We'll have to maintain hand hygiene. And on top of that, as soon as your number comes, you must get the vaccine, because this is the final weapon which is going to kill this lethal disease, this fatal disease, once and for always.
Absolutely. And that gives me a perfect segue into my next question, Professor Raghavan. May I request you to demystify some issues for the benefit of viewers who might not be familiar with the issues at hand, namely vaccines and variants. Now, we were told about 1 or 2 variants. Now there is talk of 4 variants being reported from various parts of the country. So in your knowledge, how many variants are we talking about today as we speak? Number 1. Number 2, are those vaccines, the 2 vaccines in use today in India, Covishield and Covaxin, how effective do you think they will be, or they are, against these double mutants or various mutants or mutations of the coronavirus? And does, when you say phase 3 or third wave is inevitable, does it automatically presume that a third shot of the vaccine becomes inevitable too, especially for those who have already taken 2 doses of the vaccine?
There's a lot to unpack there, but the bottom line is vaccines work. The 2 vaccines we have at hand work against the variants which are there now, and all the available vaccines which are coming in nationally and internationally will work against the variants. The reason for this is simple. If you look at the virus as a ball in which there are spikes over there, it is the spikes and part of the spikes which are used to enter our cells.
Right.
Now,
if there are changes there, then the virus can become more or less transmissible. And this is a region where antibodies against the virus also attack. Now, the antibodies attack many, many parts of the spike, not just one. So if there's a change in one part, which make the transmission, for example, better, it doesn't affect the ensemble, the group of antibodies. So we still have vaccines which work.
Right.
Now, I think it's a bit premature to talk about booster doses and third waves and so on. As we've heard, right now, focus on crunching the second wave. That requires us to build up our infrastructure. No matter how much you build it, if you let the surge grow in other places, it will not be sufficient, our infrastructure. Crunch it by keeping distances. That's what we must focus on.
Absolutely.
That's the mantra. People keep asking, when will vaccines come? Vaccines grow 1, 2, 3, 4 over weeks and months. Viruses grow 2, 4, 8, 16 over days. We have to exponentially crunch the exponential growth of the virus. That means changing our behavior. That is the focus again and again. We should, of course, discuss vaccines and variants and third waves and so on and so forth. But the beginning of every discussion and the end of every discussion, remind ourselves, we have in our hands to crunch this virus. And that is by changing our behavior from individuals, housing communities, local government, state government, central government.
A quick follow-up question, Professor Raghavan. Now, Minister Jaishankar says a global pandemic such as COVID-19 requires global support, global effort. In that context, how are you looking at the assistance being received from abroad and how that assistance might keep India in good stead going forward as well, given the fact, as you mentioned this afternoon, that one cannot negate the possibility of a similar outbreak going forward as well?
You know, again, we should know when we discuss possibilities and take precautions for possibilities, we shouldn't get distracted by that from the task at hand.
Right.
The possibilities are important. Preparing for that is important. But doesn't mean you drop everything you're doing now and run after that. Right now, again, I will say, what we have at hand is a very urgent requirement to make sure that our healthcare infrastructure can handle this wave. And it can handle it only if you reduce its growth in centers where the surge is high now and elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Now, upping the infrastructure requires cooperation nationally, state-wise, district-wise, everywhere else, logistics, and also international collaboration. We are part of a global supply chain. We export, we import. And that, is not something to, be ashamed of or to worry about. At this time, we must focus on every possible way to, get things done.
Absolutely. And Dr. Singh, coming to you now very quickly, this afternoon we were told that physicians, doctors across the country would do well to actually engage more in teleconsultation, telemedicine, so that people who are afflicted with the virus will get proper and timely medical attention, even remotely, without the need to physically go to a hospital or a health center nearby. So is there something which you think needs to be done on a war footing going forward?
This is a absolutely very, very important concept. It has been practiced. It is not, but on that COVID scenario, this is going to be extremely useful. One, that it's a very, very, rapidly infective disease, and sometimes when it takes bad turn, it is rapidly fatal disease. So, and there are many things that is happening. One of the things which I am noticing is that because of the social media, because of the search engines, the people have started treating themselves, and that too a disease which is as fatal as COVID-19.
Right.
Needless to say that this is not acceptable, because medicines which the people are taking, without the consultation of a doctor, are like, corticosteroid, remdesivir, and all sort of things. Believe me if you can, all prescription of all these drugs, it requires, medical knowledge and experience. What dose do you need? Do you really need it or not? If there is some side effect that happens, how are you going to handle it? So this self-medication, this is extremely harmful. And needless to say, that's a very infective disease. If the people are in their household, if they are given teleconsultation, somebody calls me on phone and tells me that I have got this symptom, this symptom, this symptom, believe me, I can judge it on phone. That should I prescribe, few medications for this patient, and that patient will also have the option to reconsult me if those medicines which I have prescribed on telephone line or so, to reconsult me, or they should also have the option that if the disease is not controlled, then they should come to the hospital for admission and proper care. So it will stop that self-medication, which in my opinion is disastrous. That's number one. Needless to say that in this time, traveling from home to a hospital just to have, like few tablets and few medications, that exposes the person or the other people, as a matter of fact, to contract this disease. So this telemedicine is going to be extremely helpful and useful for the patient and for the other people. Because if a COVID patient is traveling from the home to the hospital, the disease is going to spread. So it's a fantastic concept and we must practice it.
Indeed, on that note, I want to thank both my guests, Professor Vijay Raghavan and Dr. Singh, for making time for us here on Newsnight. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, shifting focus to other stories we are tracking here on Newsnight. The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has given an in-principle approval for strategic disinvestment along with transfer of management control of IDBI Bank. The extent of shareholding to be divested by the Government of India and Life Insurance Corporation shall be decided at the time of structuring of the transaction in consultation with the RBI. The Government of India and LIC together currently own over 94% of IDBI Bank's equity. The strategic buyer is expected to infuse funds, new technology and best management practices for optimal development of the business potential and growth of IDBI Bank and generate more business without any dependence on the LIC or the government. The resources raised through strategic disinvestment of government equity will be used to finance the government's developmental programs. And the government has decided to extend the payment of provisional pension up to a period of 1 year from the date of retirement in view of the pandemic situation. Minister for Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions, Dr. Jitendra Singh, said provisional family pension is also being liberalized. He said instructions were issued that family pension may be sanctioned immediately on receipt of a claim for family pension and death certificate from the eligible family member without waiting for forwarding of the family pension case to Pay and Accounts Office. Dr. Singh added that similarly orders have been issued to extend the benefit of lump sum compensation to the NPS employees as well. Orders also issued to extend the benefit of lump sum compensation to NPS employees. And moving on, Mamata Banerjee on Wednesday took the oath as West Bengal Chief Minister for a third consecutive term. Prime Minister Modi congratulated her on the occasion. Meanwhile, BJP National President JP Nadda administered a pledge to party lawmakers in the state to stand against political violence as Governor reiterated his concern over post-election violence.
As Trinamool Congress Chief, Mamata Banerjee on Wednesday took oath as the Chief Minister of West Bengal for the third consecutive term. Elsewhere in Kolkata, the BJP MLAs in the presence of party's National President JP Nadda took another oath to dismantle political violence in the state. After getting majority in the recently concluded West Bengal Assembly polls, TMC Chief Mamata Banerjee in her trademark white sari and shawl took oath in Bengali at Raj Bhavan in Kolkata. She was administered oath of office and secrecy by Governor Jagdeep Dhankar. The oath-taking ceremony was a low-key profile in view of the alarming rise in coronavirus cases. After taking the oath, Mamata Banerjee said her first priority is tackling the COVID pandemic in the state. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended greetings to Mamata Banerjee. On the other side, BJP is carrying out a nationwide dharna against the widespread violence in West Bengal. As part of the protests against the TMC-sponsored post-poll violence, BJP National President JP Nadda administered pledge to BJP MLAs to fight against injustice and to remove political violence from Bengal.
चुनाव के पहले भी मैंने कहा तानाशाही, तुष्टीकरण, तोलाबाजी और यही आज जैसे ही उनको सत्ता मिलने की नौबत आई उससे पहले शाम ढलते ढलते ये घटना घट गई है। ये बताता है ममता जी के पार्टी का चरित्र और प्रजातांत्रिक तरीके से इस राजनीतिक हिंसा को नस्तो नाबूद करने के लिए हम कृतसंकल्प हैं।
Protests were carried out in various parts of the country against the post-poll violence in West Bengal. BJP workers in various states protested against the killing of their party workers in Bengal after the assembly election results were declared on 2nd May. While the BJP is accusing the TMC for the murder of its party workers and violence in Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, after taking oath, said law and order situation was under the control of the Election Commission of India for the last 3 months, and now, after being voted to power, she will make sure there is peace.
सिचुएशन बहुत गंभीर है, खास करके एक समुदाय का लोग उसके ऊपर आक्रमण हो रहा है और जो नड्डा जी ने बोला देशभाग का जो सिचुएशन था उसी एक ही हालत हो गया।
The law and order situation was under the control of Election Commission of India for the last 3 months. I have just taken the oath and I will make sure there's peace.
After reports of post-poll violence in West Bengal, BJP National President JP Nadda arrived in Kolkata on Tuesday. During his 2-day visit, Nadda met party workers and their families who were affected by the post-poll violence in Bengal. There were reports of violence against women in Bengal after the assembly elections. National Commission for Women chairperson Rekha Sharma on Wednesday reached Kolkata. In a tweet, she said she will soon meet victims of the violence in the state. She said anyone willing to share grievances related to women of the state can email her at chairperson-ncw@nic.in or WhatsApp her at 98118 99927. Bureau Report, DD India.
The Election Commission of India on Wednesday said it is unanimous that there should not be any restriction on media reporting. It said always has appropriate deliberations before any decisions are taken. The Commission clarified its stance sincerely committed to its faith in free media. It further said each of its members recognize the positive role played by media in conduct of elections in the past and present and strengthening electoral democracy in the country. The Commission was unanimous that before the Supreme Court there should not be any prayer for restriction on media reporting. The Commission said it recognizes media's role in enhancing effectiveness of election management and reinforcing transparency from the very beginning of election process till the end. Take a look now at what else is making news around India in our National Roundup segment.
Supreme Court quashed the law passed by Maharashtra government granting reservation to Maratha community in admissions and government jobs. The bench of 5 judges also declined to refer to the 1992 Indira Sahani judgment, which caps the reservation at 50%. The apex court made it clear that exceeding the 50% reservation violates Article 14 of the Constitution. Supreme Court said it will decide the date of hearing the petition which seeks suspension of construction work at the Central Vista project. The petitioner has said that in the wake of the surging cases of COVID-19, the construction work poses a high risk of infection among the construction workers. The central government has apprised the Delhi High Court that Army is ready to help Delhi government in storage of oxygen. The additional Solicitor General has said the matter will be discussed at the government level.
And it's a wrap. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Don't forget, wear a mask, wash your hands and always practice social distancing. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.